welcome to the final session of Unit 5. And in this session, we will be looking at physics classroom management skills. My name is Patrick Eji. Now, at the end of this session, you should be able to know the skills required to manage the classroom environment for effective teaching and learning of physics. Apply these management skills effectively to enhance physics teaching. Now let's look at classroom management skills required by the teacher. And the physics classroom usually is a center of physics activities where physics teachers and students are always in a dynamic interaction. And that should be the nature of your classroom, where there is that interaction between you, the teacher, and your learners. Your learners should be able to pose questions that sometimes you answer or you direct it back to them, or you also pose the question to them. There should be that interactivity in your physics class. And the physics teacher must therefore demonstrate excellent student management skills by maintaining classroom discipline, using a firm, fair, friendly, and focused demeanor. So you realize that you are going to have an interaction with your learners, and sometimes our learners may misbehave. And as a teacher, you should be able to maintain discipline in the classroom. And in so doing, you must be firm, you should be fair, you should be friendly, so that some of your actions may not look biased to your learners. The physics teacher must also show an excellent subject and pedagogical knowledge. So in the classroom, you must ensure that you have mastery over the subject that you are teaching, as well as the various methodologies that can help you to deliver successfully. Now, the skilled classroom manager will effectively present lessons so that students will perceive time in the classroom as of significant positive value. You realize there are some teachers, they will enter class and they will not do anything, sorry to say, meaningful in the classroom. And there are some teachers that when it is time for their lessons, you see their students will be rushing for them. They will be running to look for this teacher because they know that any amount of time they spend with such a teacher will significantly bring about a change in them, because the teacher is somebody who has mastery over the content, who use appropriate pedagogies. His classroom is a place that enhances interactivity. There is all these kind of activities in the classroom, and students enjoy such classroom environment. And so the atmosphere must so maintain should not be rigid and be regimented, but the atmosphere in the classroom should be flexible and conducive to student inquiry. So that when your learners are coming to your class, there are times that when some learners, their entering some classes, they will be shivering. The moment the teacher steps foot into the classroom, everything that this learner learned before the lesson will just vanish from the head. You should have a classroom that is more flexible, and it is also a conducive atmosphere for learning. So a good physics teacher is someone who realizes that among the most valued and significant roles of a science teacher is to help students understand the body of information as well as the processes of scientific investigation. So once you are able to understand your value and your significant roles as someone who is to help your learners understand the concept, then you see yourself more of being a facilitator in the classroom than an instructor, or than somebody who only gives instruction that, hey, do this, do that, and learners are not even given the opportunity to ask questions. But you should be a facilitator, and your role is to facilitate the teaching learning process. Now, let's look at teacher self-preparation. And behind the scene works determines the level of student understanding, the things that you do before you go to class. And so quality teaching depends on what is done by the teacher before stepping into the classroom. Effective teaching depends on your pre-instructional preparations that you do before you set foot into the classroom. And so preparation is key, and hence the following are important to take note of. As a teacher, set the goals in terms of conceptual and process outcomes. Anytime you are doing your pre-instructional preparation, you must set goals, and the goals should be conceptual and process outcomes. Decide what students will do in the classroom to achieve these goals, and decide how to assess whether the goals are achieved, including the rules of both formative and summative assessment. So you should be able to assess your learners during the course of instruction and at the end of instruction to help you find out whether the stated objectives have been achieved or not. And maintain a positive outlook and be flexible in the classroom. Prepare your subject material, have a sequencing. Your subject materials that are prepared should follow a sequence, and they should also correlate to standards that are being accepted. Prepare laboratory apparatus and equipment. So if it is a lab session you want to have with your learners, make sure all the materials that will be used are available before your learners even enter the laboratory. Now let's look at teacher-student interaction. And we mentioned earlier that in the physics classroom, there is that dynamic interaction between the teacher and the student. And the primary role of the teacher is to establish a learning environment where all your students are able to learn, where all your students are motivated to learn in an environment that is challenging and supportive. They shouldn't find your learning environment as a difficult place, but they should see your learning environment as a challenging and yet supportive classroom environment. Hence, a physics teacher, your role should include the following. Establish a learning community consisting of the teacher and the student. So you must always have that learning community. You shouldn't just be an autocratic teacher in your classroom where you fail to take ideas or take responses from your learners. Recognize and celebrate diversity in students. Design or select varied instructional strategies to accommodate different learning styles. So your learning strategies that you use, the teaching learning resources should help you, the teacher, to accommodate the different learning styles. We have these sensory learners, we have visual learners. All these learners are in your classroom, and your instructional strategies should be able to accommodate them. Also, establish and implement a consistent classroom management plan. So once you state the various do's and don'ts in your classroom as a teacher, ensure that they are implemented. Note that every rule you set in the class, your learners will try to test the rule to find out whether the appropriate punishment will be given to them or not. And also monitor your students' learning. Find out how well your learners are progressing on the concepts that are being taught. And make skillful use of body language, and should this use or the use of the body language should assist students towards self-discipline as well as attaining acceptable behavior. So sometimes when you find a misbehaving student in your classroom, you can pause in the course of teaching, stare at the learner, and the learner is likely to do away with that negative attitude. And also be fair, firm, but friendly. So always ensure that you are firm, but you should be friendly so that your learners can always approach you when the need be. And listen to student ideas and be prepared to address these ideas. Now, guide your students to also view the place of physics in the wider scientific world. Let them know the various applications of the various concepts that you teach, if not all, at least some of them. And encourage and support students in discovering concepts independently when possible. Make sure that students can establish connections between classroom activities and everyday experiences. And assess student progress both formatively and summatively. These are your roles as a teacher during teacher-student interaction. Now let's look at community building in the classroom. And it is important for students to feel comfortable in the science classroom or the physics classroom. And so a good teacher should make connections with the students. You should be authentic and genuine. You learn the names of all your students early and speak to each student every day. So in the classroom, don't be calling students by, hey, the boy at the back, the girl in front, the one on. Know the name of the student. Take your time and learn the names of your students. Recognize and acknowledge students' interim success that lead to final understanding of concepts and principles. So here, you must praise them when they are doing well. Anytime your students, you ask a question and they are able to give a positive feedback, try as much as possible as a teacher to let them know that you appreciate their views, so that anytime you ask questions, such students will always be willing to provide an answer to questions, even if they don't know. They want to share their views on the question that has been asked. And be available to provide extra help and be willing to respond to students' questions. So sometimes your students may come to you after class that say, I was learning this, I am not getting the concept well, can you please explain to me? Get the time for your learners as a teacher. And involve and include all students in classroom activities. Don't be selective whenever you go to the class. Make sure that all your learners become active participants during the teaching learning process. And be fair and consistent in the treatment of each other. Be accurate and specific in evaluating students' progress in the classroom. Now let's look at scientific literacy development. So science does not happen only inside the classroom, and science teachers are charged with producing informed consumers of science who will be able to make decisions whenever science intersects with public policy. And these informed consumers should be our learners in the classroom. And thus, the teacher should be an informed and critical observer of science concerned with developing scientific literacy in your learners. So take advantage of community resources at your disposal. Connect with scientists outside the classroom through speakers and field trips. Sometimes you can invite some of them as resource persons in your teaching. You can take learners on field trips to these areas where they will now have an encounter or an interaction with these scientists. All these are ways that help our learners to develop positive attitudes towards the various concepts we teach in our classroom. Now, in addition, provide students with opportunities to learn. They should be provided with the opportunity for choice and for successes. Provide meaningful applications and manageable tasks for your learners to perform. Bring scientific news into the classroom. When there is a discovery, come and share this discovery with your learners. You know that most of our students in the senior high school, let's say, assume they are all in the boarding house. And at the boarding house, they don't have access to these technological devices like the mobile phone. And so once there is a new discovery, share it with them. And they become very interested in this, and it also influences how they learn the various concepts in the physics classroom. Discuss implications of new technology and provide activities and opportunities for your students to experience physics outside the classroom. So sometimes they can take a project that will now, they will try to develop something which will not be something that will be used in the classroom, something that can depict a real world application of the concepts that they are being taught. When we are able to do this, we are able to develop scientific literacy in our learners in the physics classroom. Now, students, in this session, we looked at classroom management skills in physics. And as we bring this session to an end, let us have this as a take-home. Outline the role of the physics teacher in 1. Teacher self-preparation, 2. Teacher-student interaction, 3. Community building, and 4.